This is the Cobb Accessport. If you plan to make any modifications to your car, you'll need one of these. This device can be used to monitor live vehicle data, load maps, data log, read engine and fault codes, and even clear codes. In this video, I'm going to go over the 6 gauges you should be monitoring with your Accessport. You can monitor anything that is available in the Accessport, but the 6 that I list are going to be the most useful and the most common one that other people use. They will help you catch any issues before they become serious and help you troubleshoot your car if it is not running correctly. The following 6 are the most useful gauges. They are DAM, feedback knock, find knock learn, AF ratio number 1, AF correction number 1, manifold relative pressure or boost, and instead of boost, I actually monitor intake manifold temperature. So I think these two are interchangeable, assuming that you're hitting your target boost levels. Now I'm going to go over what exactly each of these gauges is measuring and why they're important. So first we have feedback knock correction, or just feedback knock as it's displayed on the Accessport when you select it. This will show what knock frequency the sensor itself is actually picking up. Next we have find knock learn. This is a learned correction for when knock is repeatedly detected. So the knock values are stored and a correction is applied based on a specific RPM range and load. And that RPM range and load is wherever the knock was detected. If knock continues at that same load and RPM range, then the learned value will decrease, so the number will become more negative. If no knock event has occurred over a certain period of time, then that learned value will slowly increase and the car will keep checking for knock and gradually work its way back up to 0. Once it's at 0, that means there's no corrections being made. Dynamic Advanced Multiplier, or DAM, is similar to find knock learn. This is a learned correction that gets applied when there's a significant amount of knock being detected, and this is a global direction. So find knock learn was only for a specific RPM and load range. You can think of DAM as a correction for the whole engine's timing, so the whole RPM range. So if your DAM drops, that means your car is reducing timing across the whole RPM range. And the reason it does this is to prevent the car from hitting target boost. And this is to help protect the engine because it assumes that if you're getting too much knock, not a good thing. So the engine's trying to protect itself. So as I mentioned, when excessive knock is detected, you'll see your DAM decrease. If there's no knock detected over a certain period of time, then your DAM will slowly increase. For the 02 to 05 WRX, the DAM ranges from 0 to 16. 16 means that everything's running well. For all the other ECUs, the DAM ranges from 0 to 1, and 1 means that everything's running well. AF sensor number 1 ratio, this is basically just your air to fuel ratio, and it's based on the front O2 sensor. Pretty straightforward. Under normal cruising conditions, where you're not in boost or when you're just idling, this should be close to 14.7. When you let off the gas, it will max out, I believe, to 22. And then when you're at wide open throttle, this value will decrease. So depending on your tune, it can go down to around 10 or 11. It all depends on the tune that you're running. Next, we got AF correction number 1. This is a short-term fuel correction based on readings from the front O2 sensor. So if you have any positive values, that means that fuel is being added. Any negative values, and that means that fuel is being removed. Pretty straightforward. Ideally, this should be as close to 0 as possible. According to Cobb, they say that plus or minus 16 is normal for the OTS tunes. This seems a little excessive, but that's what they claim. After I got Pro Tune, my air to fuel corrections will vary, maybe more like plus or minus 5. Manifold relative pressure, or boost. This is basically just your boost levels. And this should be matching with the car's built-in boost gauge that you have on the center display, the multifunction display. So when you get the boost gauge on there, this should be matching that. And this is great for seeing what your peak boost levels are on each drive and making sure that you're actually hitting your recommended boost levels. For some reason, when I got Pro Tuned, I don't know if I lost this gauge, but I can't find it on my Accessport. But I know before when I was running the OTS tunes, it was there. So it should be there. And then lastly, this is kind of like a bonus. Most people probably don't monitor this, but I started monitoring it after I got my upgraded intercooler just to see what the differences were. So intake temperature, or the manifold temperature, this is the intake temperature based on the sensor that's in the intake manifold. So this is right after the intercooler. It's not the MAF sensor by the intake filter. You don't really want to be monitoring that. That's not all that helpful. You want the one that's in the manifold because that's telling you what the temperature of the air is that's actually going into the engine. So I use this gauge just to make sure that my intake temps are not too high before I push the car or go wide open throttle. Under normal cruising conditions, I can see anywhere from like 2 to 20 degrees above ambient. That's Fahrenheit, and that's normal. And like I said before, this is with an upgraded intercooler, which I have the Process West Verticooler. So that one's a lot more efficient than stock. So I don't know what stock intake numbers really would be. Probably a little bit higher, or if anything, if you have high temps, once you start moving, they probably take a while to drop. With the Verticooler, they drop really quickly. Just remember, the intake temp will rise when the car is not moving or when you're going at very slow speeds. Like if you're going in a parking lot, the air is not passing fast enough to really cool anything. Make sure that you don't go wide open throttle when your intake temps are very high, and especially on really hot days. It's not good to be pushing the car when it's like 100 degrees outside. You just don't do it. So these readings I just mentioned, these are the most important ones. Obviously, it's hard to troubleshoot every little issue that you might come into when you have one of these cars, but I'll go over what the most common issues are and what you should do or what you might need to check. So under feedback knock, if you see any readings that are like -1.41 or -2.81, that's considered normal with the OTS tunes. Anything lower than this, and you should look into it, especially if you're going wide open throttle. So if you're going wide open throttle and you're getting some like really big feedback knock, you should check that because that's not normal. You should not be seeing that. If you're just cruising around, you can get knocked from pretty much anything. Like, you hit a bump in the road, it's rattling in the engine bay. If something makes any type of frequency that's similar to knock, it'll get picked up by the sensor.
So actually, the AC compressor kicking on will trigger your sensor to pick up a -1.41. It's not real knock, it's just that the compressor is at the same frequency. So it is kind of annoying in the summer, but it's not really a big deal and nothing to worry about.
But if you do get any significant knock values, what I do is check for any leaks in your intake system. Also make sure that you're using the correct octane rating. So for example, if you're running a 93 tune, but you're running 91 gas, you will get knock. So just make sure you're using the correct gas for whatever tune you're running. Occasionally, you might see large spikes in feedback knock when you're just at a stop and you start moving, or sometimes when you're shifting gears. I remember I would see this with my stage 1 and even the stage 2, or stage 1 plus and the stage 2 plus tunes. I would have no feedback knock, everything's good. As soon as I put it in first and start moving, I get like a -10 or something, but it's like for a split second, and then my dam is still fine, my fine knock learn is fine, there's no issues, and the car runs fine. And also, if it did happen, it would only happen once during the drive, and it didn't even happen every time I drove. So it was like really weird. If you get stuff like that, I wouldn't worry about it. If your dam's not moving and you're not getting fine knock learn, not a big deal. I would not worry about it. If your dam does drop, just make sure that you're not pushing the car too hard. Go easy and let the car relearn its way up to 1 or 16 if you have one of the older ones. What some people do is they'll actually just drive the car casually, let the gas go down to E, try to stay out of boost, and then once it's at E, they go fill up with a refutable station. So, sometimes you could just be it could just be bad gas. You have bad gas in your gas tank, and that's giving you knock. So just drain the tank, fill it up with good gas, and you should be good. Another thing I've noticed is I've seen dam and knock with an excessively dirty or clogged air filter. Maybe you're not getting enough air into the engine. So just make sure you keep an eye on that. Place the filter whenever you need to. Or if you have like the Cobb one, just clean it when you're supposed to. Don't let it get all clogged up. If you notice that your AF correction is excessive, so if it's really high, really low, anything over plus or minus 16%, I would double check. Make sure you're not getting any boost leaks or vacuum leaks. Possible that there's a leak in your intake track and now the car is sucking in hot air or more air than it's supposed to, and that's affecting it. Or maybe it's being blocked off. It's not getting enough air to the engine, and that's causing it to make a crazy correction. If you have the big SF intake from Cobb, make sure the cone filter is installed 1 inch from the entry. A lot of people forget to do that, and if you don't have it in the right spot, you will have issues. You could get knocked maybe, or maybe some crazy air to fuel corrections because the air is not coming in at the expected rate. If you're not hitting your target boost levels, just make sure you have the correct map loaded. I know for the OTS tunes, I don't know if there's 3 versions or 2. I know there's a high wastegate version tune. I believe a normal wastegate. I don't know if there's a low. But either way, if you're not hitting target boost levels, then you can switch over to the high wastegate option. Those options are literally for cars that are not hitting the correct amount of boost with the normal tune. If you are hitting the normal amount of tune, make sure you don't put the high wastegate option, because then you could be over boosting. So double check that. Also, just remember, just because you have some knock values or your dam drops a bit, that's not the end of the world. Your engine's not gonna blow up. You're not screwed. There's just things that you need to check. You know, when I had the OTS tunes, I did have my dam drop every now and then. I would get some knock values. I will say, after getting tuned, like a pro tune, my car has ran pretty much flawlessly, you know, knock on wood. But I haven't had my dam drop a single time, and I've been tuned for over a year and a half now. I've already put on, I think, like 12,000 miles on my car since it's been tuned. Yeah, I don't go crazy on it all the time, but I push it. I go wide open throttle every now and then. No issues whatsoever. For my feedback knock, the most I ever get is like not even negative 1.41. It's like negative 1.05. Which I think is because my tuner, like, I don't know, maybe he adjusted how the knock is detected. But either way, never had any crazy amounts of knock, never had my dam drop, and the car runs so much better than before. So I would highly, highly recommend getting a Pro Tune or E-Tune if you can. The OTS tunes are fine temporarily. I would not run them long term. I would just run them until you can actually get a Pro Tune or E-Tune. If you guys found this video helpful, subscribe. Give it a thumbs up. Feel free to comment any questions you have. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I've been dealing with the Accessport for a few years now, and I've had to do some troubleshooting myself, so I feel like I know enough to help people. But yeah, see you in the next one. Thanks.